in the winter, and you may not have agreed with me, but I said then that I thought that Mr. Hayden would be a tougher man to beat than Mr. Hawke. I still believe that.
Australia's most dramatic day in politics since November the 11th, 1975. Tonight, a nationwide special. Good evening and welcome to Nationwide 1983. We're returning earlier than scheduled tonight to cover an extraordinary day in Australian politics. But first, here's Richard Carleton.
It's to be Fraser versus Hawke, and March 5 is decision day. Fraser, an outstanding Gough politician who hasn't lost a bout yet. Fraser against Hawke, the most popular politician in Australia today. The next month will certainly be exciting for the politicians, the camp followers, the journalists, the political groupies. But whether the nation will be better off at the end of this political binge, well, who's to say? Tonight, in nationwide studios around the country, we have firstly in Melbourne, Mr. Ian Macphee, the Minister for Industrial Relations. The state of industrial relations in Australia is the ostensible reason we're having this early election. ACTU Vice President Simon Crean is also in Melbourne. The intransigent attitude of the ACTU to the wages pause is supposedly further justification for this election. Democrats leader Senator Chipp is in Perth. One side says the Democrats will be wiped out by this exercise. Others claim that they'll double their strength. Arriving at this moment in the Brisbane studio is the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Lionel Bowen. Also in Brisbane, the Senate Opposition Leader, Senator John Button. Bowen and Button, they are the duet that this morning held the knife to Mr. Hayden's political throat. Here in Canberra, Mr. Gough Whitlam, a man who's been through it all before and lost. And back in Brisbane, the man of the moment, politician and superstar extraordinaire, Mr. Bob Hawke. It's conceivable that Mr. Hawke could pull off a unique political double. Labor leader next Tuesday, Prime Minister 26 days later. It's also conceivable he could be political history 4 weeks and 2 days from tonight. Well, Mr. Macphee in Melbourne, firstly, if I may, I'd like to ask you to look at this clip of Mr. Fraser from here in Canberra only yesterday.
The national media have a responsibility to allow the issues to be debated and not their own predilections.
Exactly.
But no, I hope nobody will be reading into that, because I'm still looking to see whether we can run an election into 1984.
Well, Mr. Macphee, could I ask you, could you blame the electorate if they said we don't trust the Liberals anymore? That was Mr. Fraser barely 24 hours ago here in Canberra.
The Prime Minister has consistently said that he will, under our system, make the decision about an early election or whether a Parliament runs its full term. He's given his reasons for wanting it to be held now, and I don't think the Australian public will at all be distrustful of that. His reasons are quite clear.
Well, when is he to be believed and when is he not to be believed? If he said that 24 hours ago, that he was thinking of an election in 1984, and then that at lunchtime today he's out to Yarralumla.
Well, quite so. You see, he must go under the Constitution to see the Governor-General first. The Prime Minister will not have, as he was there having, curbside press conferences, not scheduled by him, but called by I suppose, shrewdly opportunistic journalists. He's not going to telegraph to the Governor-General his intentions in such a situation.
The press conferences are scheduled by him, Mr. Macphee. His press staff go around and advise the journalists what time he'll be arriving and invite the cameras to wait outside his office.
Well, in any event, the Prime Minister, on that occasion, as on other occasions, would not be telling the public before he has told the Governor-General of his wishes.
Yes, but I come back to the point. When is he to be believed? Because obviously he wasn't to be believed yesterday.
He's to be believed when he makes a commitment on behalf of the government and not when he simply decides to avoid answering a question which it doesn't suit him to answer at that time.
By telling the opposite of the truth?
When he makes a commitment on behalf of the government, as in the policy speech, which he'll be making shortly, that's when he's to be believed. And in the meantime, nobody in the public would expect a Prime Minister or any other public figure, especially when they have responsibilities to cabinets and elsewhere, to signal all of their intent until they're ready to do so.
Mr. Macphee, what's the industrial relations mess that we're supposed to be in at the moment?
Well, I think the issue is quite a simple one. 8 governments in Australia, elected, of course, by their various constituents, 3 of them Labor governments, agreed on the need for a wage pause. Their main disagreement was about the duration. The Arbitration Commission, which is obliged by statute to listen to the parties, heard all the parties and decided a wage pause was necessary. certain people in the Labor Party, in both the industrial wings and in the political wings, have decided that they know better than the elected governments, and we do not control the upper house of our parliament. We took the view ultimately that the people should decide whether governments are right or whether certain non-elected people are right after all.
Well, who are these certain non-elected people?
Well, you know some of the spokesmen who've been either inciting or in some cases acting determined to break the wages pause. And you've seen action in the oil industry in particular in recent weeks which threatens to add to the costs of this country and cause great dislocation in the process.
Mr. Macphee, before you came into the politics of industrial relations, you're in the real world of the practice of industrial relations, and you understand, look, it's no secret, you understand these matters very well indeed. Now, is it not the truth of the matter, the truth that you full recognise, that the ACTU is duty-bound to oppose this? I mean, they must appeal to their constituents in the same way as when you go into the Arbitration Commission. I mean, you say no wage rise, but you have in your pocket something to give. That's part of the posturing of the game that you used to engage in as a practitioner in the business.
My reference, in fact, was not to the ACTU. My reference was to the people who actually went on strike. And if you want me to be specific about two people, I think Mr. Hayden and Mr. Bowen last week said things which were highly inflammatory. I suspect they embarrassed some people in the ACTU, but the effect of it certainly was to encourage very well-paid people, 15 electricians to begin with at Geelong, who get in the order of $30,000 a year, to go on strike and demand more.
Now, this is the oil industry dispute that's hardly got underway yet.
Well, it might be your view that it's hardly got underway, but if you were running the Shell Company of Australia and had your refinery, which produces 40% of Victoria's fuel, in danger of a complete shutdown, you would have a different view.
Well, Mr. Macphee, I wonder if we might get a dispassionate account of the state of the oil industry and the dispute from Peter Couchman, who's with you in Melbourne.
Yes, well, indeed, as you've no doubt heard in Mr. Fraser's press conference, the Prime Minister's made it abundantly clear that the state of industrial relations, and in particular the attitude of the ACTU and the oil workers, they're all to be major points in his campaign. So it may be no mere coincidence that the ACTU campaign against the wage freeze has been brought into sharp public focus in the past week or so with this strike at one of the country's biggest oil refineries, and that's the Shell complex here in Melbourne. In recent times, the oil companies have generally managed to sort out their own industrial disputes, but not this time. They made a deal with 12,500 oil workers, which gave them, among other things, an 8% pay rise. But that was last year, before the wage freeze. And by the time the agreement went to the Arbitration Commission for ratification, it was a whole new ballgame. The federal government opposed the rise on the grounds that it would start a flow on and wreck the freeze. The Arbitration Commission agreed, and that resulted in a strike. A small but vital group of electricians walked out just when they were repairing this pumping equipment. The Shell refinery was closed, and suddenly we had all the makings of a petrol shortage. Now, the shortage hasn't happened yet, but now the ACTU has stepped in and decided to pressure the federal government into changing its opposition to the oil men's pay rise. So there we have a classic standoff. The unions after more money, Canberra struggling to keep the wage freeze and save the country. Now, a cynic might see that as good election ammunition. Well, Mr. Simon Crean is one of the vice presidents of the ACTU. I heard you on radio today saying that you would be doing everything in your power to make sure that the oil dispute did not become a political issue. Well, here it is now. It's the subject of an election campaign. Will you accept the Prime Minister's challenge that he threw down directly to the oil workers in the ACTU to lift all your bans and limitations and then to accept the verdict of the election to the wage freeze?
What we've indicated is it was never our intention to hurt the public in terms of the oil dispute. Our dispute was not with the public, and at that stage it was not even with the oil companies. The oil companies are happy to pay the agreement. They're not able to pay that agreement because the federal government has determined that they shouldn't pay.
But you've also made it clear that the oil dispute was to be used as the major weapon to break the wages freeze, haven't you?
We've never made that clear. That has been a distorted position. In fact, we have given undertakings to Mr. Macphee in the context of private and public discussions that we will do everything that's possible to ensure that the oil settlement does not flow on to the rest of the community. The watertight guarantee that it doesn't flow to the rest of the community is the fact that the only basis upon which ratification can be given is the fact that agreement was reached before the freeze. an exemption provision which the government's own legislation recognised.
Right. Now look, that's virtually all water under the bridge now, though, isn't it? It's been overtaken by today's events. Will you take up the challenge to lift all the bans and limitations? I mean, will you hold off until after the election?
What we've indicated is that we will be considering the position tomorrow at a meeting that was previously scheduled to assess the situation. Obviously, the fact that an election campaign has now been foisted upon us will have a bearing upon that meeting, to the extent to which our opposition was against the federal government, and the fact that we wanted to hit the federal government and not the public. I would have thought that the most effective way of hitting the federal government was to ensure it was not returned at the next election, and we will be doing what is necessary to achieve that.
Right, so you make a decision on that in the ACTU tomorrow?
Yes.
What about the other challenge? I mean, will the trade union movement accept whatever verdict people pass at this election in 4 weeks' time on the wages freeze?
I think what has to be understood in terms of this campaign is the difference of approach, and this is really what people have to make up their mind about when they're voting. Do they want to return a government that has ignored every reasonable approach by the trade union movement to solve the issues? The unemployment fund, which we proposed back in September, which was rejected by one of the ministers in the terms of a mild form of lunacy, and yet now the government says that it's got its own sorts of schemes for job creation programs.
Yeah, but
and
at the moment the public has been told, look, the ACTU has said publicly it will do everything in its power to break the wages freeze. You've got a clear conflict there between the trade union movement and the government. Surely that's what people are going to be considering.
Now, I think what you have to understand is the difference between a wages freeze and a wages pause. After all, Mr Macphee keeps using the word pause. We say that there is a difference between a freeze and a pause. We as a trade union movement have consistently said we are prepared to accommodate a pause, provided that there is an understanding as to what comes out at the end. And despite the fact that suggestions have made that all state premiers have supported the wage freeze position, the reality is the Labor premiers only supported it on the understanding that something at the end of that pause occurred.
Sure, but look, I know it's hypothetical, but if the government is returned in this election, will the trade union movement then accept that the Australian people want a wage pause or a freeze, or whatever you call it, from the trade union movement?
What we will say is that the approach by government to economic strategy can't be selective. It can't seek only to single out the trade union movement, impose freezes upon wages and do nothing about prices.
So the election wouldn't change anything?
I say that what the government, I would hope, would get the message by its defeat, and that would enable the Labor Party to introduce its alternative economic strategy, because that is one that's based around bringing all sectors of the community together, not dividing. And that's been the approach of the Prime Minister to date.
Mr Macphee, would you like to just comment briefly?
Yes,
I want to go back to Richard.
The fundamental economic issue is that this country's national income is falling. We cannot any longer support increases in real wages, or even at the moment the maintenance of real wages, without jeopardising jobs further. The Labor Party's policy, as formulated in July, and the ACTU's policy is the maintenance of real wages. We couldn't agree to a wage pause subject to the condition the ACTU placed upon it, which was a catch-up at the end of that time. We cannot foresee what the state of the economy will be. The Arbitration Commission is empowered to do that. It's made a judgment, and we ask people to abide by that. It is not the government the ACTU is fighting, it's the Arbitration Commission.
All right, well, let's go back to Canberra now. Richard.
Peter, thank you, and be more from Mr Macphee later in the program tonight. But now to Brisbane and Mr Bob Hawke. Mr Hawke, could I ask you whether you feel a little embarrassed tonight at the blood that's on your hands?
You're not improving, are you? I thought you'd make a better start to the year than that. It's a ridiculous question. You know it's ridiculous. I have no blood on my hands. I was not involved in the discussions that Bill Hayden's fellow leaders had with him. I hope the standard of your questioning improves.
Mr Hawke, then how do you expect the electorate to believe that you were not party to the plotting that's been going on for the past fortnight?
If it's a question, Mr Carleton, of the electorate having to believe between your stupidity in such a question as that and my integrity, I have no doubt where their belief will fall. I have been in the public eye probably now for longer than just about any other figure. My integrity is recognised, and I'm telling you, and you can believe it or not in terms of whether you want to appear half smart as you look so bad at. You can believe it or not. I'm telling you the facts. I was not involved in the discussions which Bill Hayden's fellow leaders had with him and which led to the decision that he made. That is clear and unequivocal.
Did you know beforehand that those discussions were going on, Mr Hawke, or they just suddenly happened out of the blue and you didn't know anything about it?
Look, the question of one reading the paper is simple enough to inform you that they were happening. There was no consultation with me in terms of saying this is what is going to happen, what's going to be the result. Now,
well, let me go to a hard nitty-gritty question about it then. I mean, there was nothing in the paper this morning about the meeting this morning at 9 o'clock, I think it was, between Mr Bowen and Senator Button, and where they told Bill Hayden that, you know, his days were finished. Well, now, can you expect people to believe that you didn't know that that meeting was going to take place?
I can expect people to believe that you are a damned impertinence, Mr Carleton. I can expect them to believe that when I say something, that I tell the truth. If you, for your perverted reasons, wish to try and suggest that something is the case when I say it is not, I had no knowledge of any meeting this morning. I had an indication yesterday that perhaps by the end of this week, Mr Hayden may make a decision. When I went into that executive this morning, I had no knowledge whatsoever that he was making his decision. Now, Mr Carleton, you can sit there with your silly quizzical face. You've got a reputation right around this country. Yeah, it's looking better still. You've got a reputation for your impertinence, your refusal to accept people at their face value, to try and ridicule the integrity of people. Now, I don't mind my integrity being on the line against yours.
Mr Hawke, thank you very much. We'll come back to you in Brisbane later, if we may, to hear what your economic strategy might be in this matter. But if we may go on to other matters, the irony of today is that Mr Fraser committed himself irrevocably to the early election at lunchtime when he called on the Governor-General. Now, he did not know at that time that Mr Hayden was to resign, nor did Mr Hayden know that as he resigned, an early election was being called. Fraser called an election expecting to be fighting Hayden, and he's got one against Hawke. Now, politics can be a very cruel business. What happened to Mr Hayden today was cruel as the occasion that Mr Fraser sunk the knife into Mr Snedden back in 1975. Last July, Mr Hayden survived in a very close vote. What's happened between last July and this morning that caused Mr Hayden to give up without a fight? Paul Murphy.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks. What a hell of a way to announce it.
What a hell of a way to prove you had to go there.
Well, that vignette of genuine, if slightly tense bonhomie between victor and vanquished was only 6 months ago, on July the 16th, 1982 to be precise. Bill Hayden was still leader of the party and determined to stay that way till the election. How, then, is he out of that job tonight? According to sources close to Senator John Button, Mr Lionel Bowen and Senator Don Grimes, whom I talked to today, nervousness at Mr Hayden's ability to win a federal election set in soon after he beat off Mr Hawke's challenge. In August 1982 came what should have been an enormous political bonanza for the ALP in the Costigan report on the Painters and Dockers Union and the whole issue of bottom-of-the-harbour tax avoidance. Labor should have flayed the government over the biggest scandal for years. But as Christmas approached, there was a general view inside the parliamentary party that if Hayden hadn't lost the argument, he'd done not nearly well enough. He was thought to have let both Malcolm Fraser and John Howard off the hook. Labor members and senators left Canberra for their Christmas holidays in pensive and brooding mood, worried above all about the prospect of a snap election early this year and Mr Hayden's chances of winning it. Senator Button and Mr Bowen came under strong pressure from parliamentary colleagues, prospective candidates and state party machines to think deeply about their commitment to Mr Hayden. It was pressure that came from elements in all party factions, from left and right. In the week after Christmas, just before he left for Fiji, John Button was thinking of switching from Hayden to Hawke. When he returned to Australia, he flew to Brisbane in the first week of January to see Bill Hayden. He told his leader of the party's widespread disquiet and warned him he had lost the numbers to Mr Hawke. Senator Button suggested that Mr Hayden should stand aside from the leadership to avoid massive bloodletting in the party room. Mr Hayden refused and said he would fight to the end. John Button, a long-time friend and admirer of Bill Hayden, was emotionally drained by the meeting. Today he talked in Brisbane to Sean Hoyt.
What do you think would have been the outcome of a caucus meeting if it had come in, say, the next month or so and Bill Hayden had been challenged?
It's my belief if a caucus ballot for the leadership had taken place that Bill Hayden would have been defeated.
Why, in your assessment, had Mr Hayden lost the support of the party?
Well, I think, you know, in some ways you'd have to ask Bill Hayden about some of these things, but I felt that his performance has not been as good as it was since about July last year. I think that he lived continually under the glare of a rather hostile media, very critical all the time, unnecessarily so, and critical in the context of the knowledge that there was somebody else in the Parliamentary Labor Party, namely Bob Hawke, who is a popular public figure in Australia, has been quite forthright in stating his ambitions to be leader of the Labor Party. And I think that created a number of strains for Bill Hayden, which probably affected his performance as leader of the party.
John Button in Brisbane this afternoon. On January 18 came Mr Hayden's statement that the union should try to make the government's pay pause work. At a shadow cabinet meeting on the 20th of January, Mr Hayden was attacked by his colleagues for taking that position and agreed to reverse his stand. I understand he copped even more criticism from his comrades for what they saw as an ungainly somersault on the issue, which gave the press even more ammunition for attack. Last Thursday, Senator Button and Mr Lionel Bowen, the two men who helped Bill Hayden drive off Mr Hawke only 6 months before, conferred over the phone. It was decided that the axe should be lifted over Mr Hayden's neck, but when the blow should fall was still up in the air. Last night in Sydney, Senator Button met his Senate Deputy, Don Grimes. The final scenario was set. When morning tea was taken at the executive meeting in Brisbane this morning, Mr Hayden, Mr Hawke, Mr Bowen and Senator Button left their colleagues and went upstairs. When they returned, Mr Hayden told his colleagues he was resigning. The axe had fallen bloodlessly.
Back now to Mr Hawke, who's in Brisbane tonight. Sir, a change of leaders for the Labor Party next Tuesday, but what's going to happen to the economic policy of the party? Are we to see it brought forward, or is there to be some exposition on it?
The economic policy of the party will be finalised, and the Australian public will have a clear choice between the certainty of what Labor will be putting and the absolute uncertainty of the Fraser government's position. The Fraser government in August of last year, relatively only a few weeks ago, was supposed to put its blueprint. What it was saying was its economic policy for Australia in the next year. That is in absolute tatters now. It's totally unrecognisable. You're getting economic policy in a scattergun approach day by day now. No one knows what will be said next. Let me conclude. By way of contrast, the electorate will have from the Labor Party through me a clear and unequivocal statement of achievable objectives.
Why has it taken so long to reach this position? Is your policy going to be different to Mr Hayden's on economics?
The two questions, you put them, let me answer them in turn. One reason why the process of arriving at economic policy in the Labor Party is different from that in the Liberal Party is that we have a democratic process within our party where there is discussion, as distinct from the shoot from the hip opportunism which characterises the way this Prime Minister goes about formulating the alleged policies of his government. And the second question, there will not be a great deal of difference between anything that Bill Hayden has said and that I have said. One of the observed features by a number of analysts of the political scene over the years is the remarkable identity that there is between Bill and myself in the economic area.
Would you concede, Mr Hawke, that the Labor Party, to put it just politely, is in a mess?
Is in a...
Mess?
Is in a mess. No,
yes.
I wouldn't concede that it's in a mess. If you want a comparison, Richard, I would say that we in the Labor Party are now totally united. There will be no opposition to my election. All elements of the Labor Party in all states will work for the election of a Labor government. There will be no division, and that will be in distinct contrast to the situation where Mr Fraser has to get a visa to get into Western Australia. I will be welcomed with open arms.
Yes, so of course there's the odd Labor member from Western Australia that's not too happy about your position at the moment. Is that not the case?
No, it is not the case. It is the case that all Western Australians on the executive indicated that they would support my leadership. There is no one from Western Australia or anywhere else who's indicated otherwise, and I certainly haven't either in Western Australia or in any other state been told by our branch of the party in that state that I'm not welcome, as distinct from the Prime Minister in Western Australia.
Yes. Would you be able to run a Labor cabinet any better than Mr Whitlam? Would you still have a Labor cabinet with, say, 27 ministers all deciding each decision?
Your performance tonight is pathetic, Richard. Let me talk about the factual situation of what will happen in 1983. It's not helped in any way by any comparison with what did or did not happen in the period 1973 to 75. We have worked out the forms of administration that will cover the way in which the Cabinet will operate through its committee system, through its functional committee system, its relationship with the caucus. We have a clear view of what will be the most efficient way of conducting our affairs, which will combine the factor which we have in our party of the opportunity of our members fully to participate in the processes of decision-making, with then the final responsibility for the formulation of legislation which has to be taken by Cabinet, which is in distinct contrast from the way in which the Fraser government operates. That is all in place. It will work efficiently.
Yeah. Mr Hawke, thanks very much indeed. Alongside you there in the Brisbane studio is Mr Bowen, I understand, the deputy. There, Mr Bowen, good evening to you. Thank you very much for coming into the studio.
Thank you.
So do you feel that you've got a little bit of blood on your hands?
There's no blood. I can't understand your stupidity, to use another word. You heard Bill Hayden tonight say he come to the decision himself as far back as last Sunday, and I would suggest to you that perhaps it's been under consideration by him for the last 4 weeks.
Where does the timing start from? What was the trigger that brought him to start thinking this way?
I don't know. You ought to ask Bill Hayden that. I mean, let's be fair about it. You're an international figure. You've got some reputation. Why would you expect me to know what come into Bill Hayden's mind?
Well, of course you're his deputy and you'd probably talk to him about it.
I do talk to him about it, and I hope you believe now what I'm telling you. But tonight on TV, he said he made the decision himself, and all you've done is talk about blood and problems between the people in the Labor Party. Not so. Why don't you face up to the fact that Malcolm Fraser has called an election for March the 5th, the announced date he was going to meet President Reagan in the United States. I don't know what's happened to that proposed visit.
Oh, it's been put off for a while.
Why? Why don't you ask why? Why has it been put off? What happened to cause that postponement?
Well, he was invited to appear on the programme tonight, Mr Bowen, and he's declined the invitation, so I can't have the opportunity to ask him that very question.
I'm suggesting he's a pretty weak man.
Well, that's for you to say. When did your plotting with Senator Button begin?
There was no plotting. Why are you so offensive? Why are you so far off the mark? The issue is that Mr Hayden made the decision himself. There was no plotting about this matter, and I suggest to you that it would be more forthright and smacking more of integrity if you accepted what we say to you. There was no question of any challenge to Bill Hayden. There was no plotting. It was a question that Hayden made the decision.
I mean, I just don't believe that you expect anyone to believe you, that Bill Hayden just woke up one day and said, geez, after that fight last July, I've had too much and I'm going to give it away now.
Let's make it very clear. Bill Hayden just didn't wake up one day. I told you earlier in the programme, for a month he was considering the matter. 1 month. Why do you suggest he woke up one day? Today, he said, he came to the decision last Sunday night, after perhaps 1 month's consideration and discussion. Let's make it very clear, but very fair.
Mr Bowen, thanks very much indeed. The government, Mr Fraser and Mr Howard, the Treasurer particularly, have been giving the opposition a hiding on economics. The Fraser government, which has a shocking economic record, has to date won the economic debate hands down. But with Paul Keating, now the Shadow Treasurer, one can detect how he's seeking to turn the argument Labor's way. Here's Kel Richards.
That's what this by-election's all about. It's about what's happening to the Australian economy and what's happening to the people trying to cope with it. That's why we're urging you to vote no confidence in the Fraser government. The Prime Minister needs the firmest protest you can send him.
That's the Hayden election style, and that's the style that appeared not to work well enough. This by-election was won, but the next one, the Flinders by-election, was lost, a loss stunning many of Hayden's colleagues and political commentators. Communication was seen as the problem, with Hayden and his economic spokesman Ralph Willis seen as failing to sell the ALP's economic package with their laboured media style.
What we're stating is that indisputably the
cautious estimate of the cost of tax avoidance in this country is at least $6,000 million.
Mr. Howard,
Eric
Ristrom
says of the order of $7,000 million. We're saying we'll get at least 65 to 70% of that, at least, by the time our measures are fully effective. We would expect to smash tax avoidance and get practically all that, and progressively increase the amount we'd get from tax evasion.
By comparison with that, Bob Hawke is seen as being fluent and persuasive. To sell an idea, a politician needs to be able to come up with a slogan, a few neat words that will be both clear and memorable. For example, in a speech last weekend to the Australian Institute for Political Science, Hawke accused Prime Minister Fraser of causing the wages explosion of 1981-82 in these words: "The arsonist lit the fuse and now craves credibility in his fireman's uniform." Surveys have shown that while most Australians are worried by such things as inflation and high unemployment, they have tended so far not to blame the Fraser government. To win this election, Hawke must turn that attitude around. Here's another quote from that same speech. "The Prime Minister is attempting to pull off what is, even by his generous standards, a confidence trick of very substantial and dangerous proportions." By his side, as economic spokesman, Bob Hawke will have the ALP's other great sloganiser, Paul Keating.
No matter where you look, it just means that inflation is now the same as it was a year ago. It's slightly down on September, and that's only because of the recession, and it's likely to grow again in March as unemployment continues to grow. I mean, the government simply can't take a trick.
The government can't take a trick. That's the kind of neat, very Australian and colloquial slogan that people remember. That's why Keating is seen in some circles as being a communicator able to neutralise Treasurer John Howard's potent impact on the media. As a taste of the campaign about to begin, here's a recent Paul Keating press conference with subtitles to draw your attention to the way Keating orchestrates his media statements for the greatest impact.
You can't just attack inflation alone. You've got to attack both inflation and unemployment simultaneously. In other words, one has to have an incomes policy while one embarks upon an expansionary economic policy. Now, this government has no incomes policy. The best they could come up with after years of chaos in incomes policy is a 6-month freeze. That will expire in a few months' time, and then again they are waiting around without any policy. So it's quite obvious that under the Fraser government's policy, Australia simply can't pull itself from recession, and high unemployment will be a feature of our economy for a long time, and so will high inflation.
Paul Keating, the man who's now the Shadow Treasurer in the Labor Party. To Perth now, and Senator Don Chipp, the leader of the Australian Democrats. Senator, under a double dissolution election, of course, the quota is smaller, and so one should be more easily elected, other things being equal. But one might expect this election, one might expect it to be a Hawke-Fraser contest where the Democrats get swamped, as in 1974 when the DLP was wiped out in that election. Where do you think you'll be after March 5? Was no one getting Senator Chipp, or just me? Well, I apologise to you that nobody was getting Senator Chipp, and hopefully we'll come back to him in a moment. But in the meantime, as I mentioned earlier in the program, a man who's been through this all before and lost is the former Prime Minister, Mr. Gough Whitlam. Mr. Whitlam, has Labor done the right thing in dumping Mr. Hayden?
It's not for me to say who should be the leader of the party. I'm not a member of the caucus. That makes the decision. But I believe that if, as Mr. Fraser says, the election is to be on industrial issues, there are no issues that will suit Mr. Hawke better, and there is no one in Australia who can deal with industrial issues more convincingly and more effectively.
Has Mr. Hawke got the emotional stability and the personality to handle the job as you knew it?
I have no doubt. His record in industrial affairs is extremely impressive. That has been the basis of his popularity. He's been the greatest mediator in our country's history.
That's one thing to do that in industrial relations, but then the task that he would be setting himself was the electorate to give him a mandate.
There are many industrial disputes which he's had to come in and settle, which have lasted longer than this election campaign. There's no question he can tackle that issue, which is what Mr Fraser has designated as the key. I've no doubt he can tackle other ones, and he is a superb communicator.
Could he stand up to 3 years of the pressure that you were under in 72 to 75?
I don't think the pressure that I was under will recur again. You will never again get a Governor-General or a Chief Justice debasing their office as Kerr and Barwick did. And you can see what the public think of Kerr and Barwick. That won't occur again.
Would Mr Hawke do a better job than you believe you did as Prime Minister?
No.
You're without peer, is that right?
I was the greatest reforming Prime Minister. And if the party wants to achieve things which count, they will pick up where I left off.
Do you think they will? Would?
I think they probably will. We can't just fight things on issues determined by our opponents.
Mr Whitlam, thanks a lot for coming to the studio tonight, and I should explain to the audience at home tonight that you're dressed in that attire because obviously you're going out to a formal dinner. Thank you for coming to the studio.
Yes, well, don't forget the people who dressed up before Waterloo won it.
So just wait there for 1 second, I'll let you out of the studio. Back to Melbourne, if we may, and Mr Ian Macphee, the Minister for Industrial Relations. Sir, I thank you so long. Thank you for waiting so long. Could I ask you to reflect on how popular a man Mr Hawke is in the electorate, as we all know, and how difficult a task it's going to be for Mr Fraser and yourself and the rest of the Cabinet and the Ministry to better him in the communications stakes?
Well, Mr Hawke is certainly popular by all the polls, but Mr Whitlam has made one fundamental mistake in what he just said. This issue is not about industrial relations as such, it's about an economic policy, a short-term economic policy which includes a wages pause, which is threatened by industrial action inspired by some members of the Labor Party both within and without Parliament. Now, Mr Hawke has not yet, and nor has the Labor Party, produced an economic policy which compares with that of the government. And there is a coherence and continuity in the government's policies which will and do appeal to the electorate. And it is not a matter of shooting from the hip. We have not yet heard from the Labor Party any policy likely to be responsive to the economic situation in which we find ourselves. If they want to maintain real wages, if they want to enforce that by industrial action, all the popularity in the world of Mr Hawke will soon go out the window amongst those who lose their jobs, and that's what's now at stake. It's a very simple issue of saying that the economic recession which we withstood so long because of the effectiveness of our policies has now caught up with Australia. We've got a series of policies in place and others programmed which will take us out of the wages pause and take us back again to industrial development. Now, Mr Hawke has to match policies. Personalities will not matter to the Australian public. Mr Fraser, in his way, has a personality, a strength of character, a proven leadership, which in fact is what Australians will go for. So all the popularity in the world won't help.
Some Australians, Mr Macphee, might adhere to that fair go mate type syndrome and say that the government of which you are a member has presided over a decline in our economy virtually without parallel. We're in a parlous state now, and what you can do is only bring on an early election and desynchronise the two houses rather than serving out the 12 months that you have available.
There's nothing more democratic than asking people to judge your policies. Mr Whitlam said, let's go, he hopes that the Labor Party will take up where he left off. Where he left off was a point of a great wages explosion where the share of GDP of wages was higher than is healthy for an economy. We are, thanks to the last wages explosion, which we're now trying to curb, back in precisely that situation. It is a combination of efforts that make this country run well. Governments set the parameters and other people try and breach them. We are now asking the electorate to judge our policies as supported by the state governments quite uniquely and as upheld by the Arbitration Commission, and judge adversely those people with whom Mr Hawke, through all of the years of his public office, has been identified and whom it is now upon him to curb. If he became Prime Minister, he's never been a minister before, as Mr Whitlam had never been a minister before. I can tell you, after 6 years of being a minister, there's a lot to learn. I don't think the public will go to another new boy.
Mr Macphee, thank you very much for coming to the studio. That's all now from Canberra, and back now to the state capitals.
Oh, well, as you probably know, Nationwide was scheduled to go back on air on a regular basis from Monday night. Subject to any further extraordinary events tomorrow, we will be starting our 1983 season then. Obviously, it's going to be a very interesting first month in Australian politics. And, of course, don't forget, we do plan to be extending our international coverage this year. So until Monday night, I'll say good night.